Welcome into another edition of Pack Therapy with myself, Tim Donnelly, and my co-host, Mike Glennon, former NC State quarterback, ready to talk some NC State football after a ACC schedule opening win over UVA, which we'll start there, Mike. Right? You kind of have to force yourself after to celebrate that one. It's like you celebrate every win, ACC. You have to.
A win's a win, and they're hard to come by, especially from in conference. But it didn't feel good.
I feel like every coach I ever had, after you pull out like a win that you should have played much better in, they're like, why did I say at the beginning of this thing that we're going to celebrate every win? Because I really want to, start nitpicking things right away. But, I mean, like you said, they're all hard to come by. You only get a certain amount of them in your certain amount of contests in your career, so you have to celebrate. But the nitpicking starts kind of early. Why couldn't they just put UVA out of their misery? Is kind of the way I was thinking of that game. UVA kept trying to hand the game over to NC State, so we'll start at the end, right? That the second half there were turnovers, there were dumb penalties, there was every which way to lose a game for UVA. But NC State kept leaving them in it.
They definitely left them in it, and towards the end, it felt like UVA lost the game rather than NC State winning, which is why I think you have that kind of bad taste in your mouth where you won, but you don't even feel like you won. And, you're working completely backwards. You start with the field goal where, talk about it, driving a coach crazy, undisciplined, to have a penalty by Virginia on that field goal that we missed. I mean, that's what, coaches lose their mind over. So that was kind of a lucky break. Then the helmet coming off in the over or before it on the touchdown, the quarterback. I understand what the ref saw. The ref saw the helmet off and him flexing, but that was not the case. I mean, the helmet came off by getting hit. So that shouldn't have been the penalty. This is one of those games where, NC State fans talk about NC State stuff. That's not the case here. This was,
UVA stuff, Virginia stuff. I can't be the only one that heard this. I thought it was hilarious because the announcer, after the touchdown, the offensive guard, who's apparently a veteran, got a unsportsmanlike penalty, taunting or something like that. And the announcer actually said, the color commentator said, now after the 2-point conversion, do whatever you want, go nuts. And then the 2-point conversion, they scored it, and the helmet came off, and he was doing the flex thing, and the penalty was thrown. And then the announcer was giving the quarterback all kinds of trash and say, "Oh, you can't do it." I'm like, you literally.
I noticed that too.
I was like, you just said do anything, but then you after you said it, you recognize that it being forced on the kickoff and give them a chance. And I mean, it like you said, it's kind of maybe it's the beginning of UVA stuff, but it's tough. On the flip side of that, Brennan Armstrong led whatever it ended up being like a 30-second drive to win the game, ran for a couple firsts. What do you think of how he executed down the stretch?
He keeps being one of these guys where I'm watching the film or watching the game and I don't feel good about it. And then I turn on the film and it's not as bad as you think. Never as good as you think, never as bad as you think. And for him, he did lead the drive at the end of the game. It's kind of, again, working backwards. He did some really good things at the end of the game. And then really it was just the first quarter. He had a couple of missed throws and he had the interception that was bad as well. But other than that, I mean, he's the offense right now. It's him and KC Concepcion. His running, I think people don't realize what his running ability is doing. I mean, he's leading the team in rushing yards. His numbers are not great, but you look across the way at Chapel Hill and Drake May's numbers aren't great either. And I'm not saying he's Drake May talented, but I think
Drake May did throw a left-handed touchdown pass. So there's a few different things going on.
I believe he's got 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, which is the exact same thing that I believe Brennan Armstrong has. So
he has 1 less right-handed touchdown.
And he's got, rushing touchdowns as well. So 3 rushing touchdowns on the year, 5 passing, 3 rushing. Would I like to see more? Yeah, but I think you could say that about almost every quarterback you want to see more. So, it was another, like I said, better than you think after you watch the film.
It's really the big mistake with the quarterback giving them such good field position on the final drive is it opened up the run for Brennan Armstrong.
Exactly.
That extra time plus a good return. Don't get me wrong, like the return mattered. But it gave them the ability where Brennan Armstrong could run and they could get up, and that was enough. If they had a little bit further to go, he would have had to throw him back into it. And that's where you're like, watching the game, I just don't feel good. Like if you told me he had to go 20 more yards, I would have been very, very concerned. But with the way it broke, he was able to kind of, step up in the pocket. If he saw grass, take off, pick up a couple first, that ended up being the difference.
It was a very quick, I'm looking at it. First play was a run for 8 yards. Then he ran for another 8 yards. I mean, it was all like everything was runs. So
which you wouldn't be able to do with 20 more yards.
That penalty was crucial. I mean, you start with the ball, at the 48-yard line, which completely opens up the playbook. You're thinking,
was it the minus 48? Was it the minus 48?
UVA 48-yard line.
Oh, see, as a quarterback, you want that drive not to start in plus territory. You want it, you want that to look like a game-winning drive from your side of the field.
So just to answer the question, I get why fans can be frustrated at times. He misses a throw here or there. End of the day, that's going to happen in college football. I remember in the first quarter, he kind of missed a whole shot. He had the bad interception. But when you watch the film, there's times where the receivers weren't completely getting out of breaks and the ball looks like it's, like a comeback where it looks like he's not on target. It's the stuff that you don't really see in the TV copy that shows up on the All-22 film. But this is going to be a big week playing a better team than Virginia.
And we're going to say, by the way, this will be a 2-part podcast. The second part will focus on, or just like the second half of this podcast, not a 2-parter. We'll focus on the Louisville game coming up. And like and subscribe. I failed to say at the beginning of the show. Find podcasts wherever you find them. Like, subscribe, watch on YouTube, all those sorts of things. We appreciate it. Do you know what was easily my favorite play of the entire game? And there were big ones, like the Concepcion kind of crosser where the real big play. There were defensive plays that were great. I absolutely loved the play call on the fake screen touchdown pass because, it felt like the first time a defense had really been surprised by something State was doing. You had some big plays against VMI, but not like that. To me is like, all right, we've been setting it up. We're gonna go reap the rewards here, and it was well executed. It was well run. Concepcion sold it like a veteran as a freshman. For the first time, I really want to like tip my hat to Robert Anai and say that's what I was waiting for. That's what I thought we were going to have a ton of when Anai and Armstrong got back together.
Yeah, there's 2 things with that. I thought it was funny that when they got back from the break, they were clearly interviewed Doran during the TV timeout, and they were asking about getting the offense going. And it was a little slow, and then boom, like as he's still talking, pretty much they score. But it kind of brings me back to what we talked about in Notre Dame when they got that turnover in the when Notre Dame fumbled in our red zone. And we were talking about how we would have liked to see Robert and I come up with more of a play design than just throw a fade up to the guy.
On back-to-back plays, they threw the deep ball, and I was like, man, one is enough. I don't love that play anyway.
Right. But this morning I was watching Get Up, and Jeff Saturday was on, and they were talking about something. He's like, in the red zone, think players, not plays, which that's like the opposite of what we're saying in this situation, which NFL, I get it. You got a receiver that's probably making 15 to 20 million. On this NC State offense, you need to think plays, not players. And I thought that was a great job by Robert and I coming out of that kind of timeout, being the first play of the second quarter. Great play design. Clearly worked.
I don't want to throw shots at Jeff Saturday, but the coaching record might speak for itself. And I mean, I think his career is let Peyton Manning make the decision. Like, yeah, I agree. Peyton Manning should make the decision. I will not take any play calling away from him. But I like that is like I would have loved to see. That's a perfect example of what you just brought up, right? When the defense gets you the ball, or when a big play gets you down there, and you need to capitalize, you need to have your favorite play, something you feel is set up, something you feel you saw on film that are going to bite on, and I mean it was well executed and it was a touchdown. Like it couldn't have gone better. It got your freshman into the end zone, which allowed Concepcion to I don't know maybe settle down, and maybe that played into some of his bigger plays later in the game because that Concepcion looks like the real deal. Um, Obviously, can you do it again? But he might be a spark that they really need as far as someone that could be a dynamic player.
He's definitely is a dynamic and is going to be a very impactful dynamic player in the future. But for right now, I think he's that. He's a dynamic player. He's not a guy that I think we can say, yes, we can say, I think they found their number one receiver. No, I don't think we can say this is a guy that's going to take over a football game. And, how we've been talking about the third downs when you got one-on-one. May he win it? Yes. May he lose it? Yes. I think it's a player that NC State found that they got a guy. But we have to remember this kid's a true freshman. I don't think he's quite ready to kind of be the guy that play in and play out is going to be the go-to guy. So it's great that he stepped up and they found someone, but we're still going to need to see the whole group really step up.
When you were watching, did you notice Jordan Houston wasn't there?
I did.
Really?
Yes, because I think what they're going to miss Jordan Houston the most is in pass protection. And I think that's an underrated thing that fans might not think about. I'm a fan of Jordan Houston. Maybe wasn't as productive as we had hoped, but I know his athletic skill set. I know he's smart, and he's one of those guys in third down pass protection situations that you can count on. And I saw a couple times during that game where either the back didn't go the right place in blitz protection, or just wasn't executed well, where he completely missed the blitzing linebacker. So I think, although that doesn't show up in the stat sheet of what Jordan Houston did for this football team, I think we're going to see more of that NC State fans are going to miss him more than they might think.
And that's a perfect transition. We're going to take a quick break here in just a minute and get moving into Louisville. But I can guarantee you Louisville saw it too, right? Like if there's a backfield that the running back isn't picking up what they should, you're going to see some six-man pressures coming pretty darn quick.
Without a doubt. And I'm sure NC State coaches, they're no dummies. They see the film too. They know what Louisville is going to play in. So I'm sure that's going to be a huge point of emphasis.
You better fix it because it'll be tested. It's the Pack Therapy Podcast. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're focusing in on this week's game, another Friday game against Louisville. Like and subscribe, and we'll be back. Pack Therapy Podcast. Tim Donnelly, Mike Lennon here. Back-to-back Fridays for the NC State Wolfpack. This one against Louisville. Different beast, this Louisville team. They have a Brom coaching now. They have a Plummer playing quarterback. They have, outside of Florida State, maybe they are like transfer U in the ACC right now, and it's working. We talked a lot about the offense. Kind of happens when you have two quarterbacks in the podcast during the first half. The defense for NC State will be tested. I did some quick research on ACC ranks. Louisville right now is number one in the ACC in yards per game. They're number one in pass yards per game. They're number one in rush yards per game. And they're scoring 43 points per game, which is like third or fourth, but like 43, 43.2, 43 point, like they're right at the top. So NC State's defense is the strength. The Wolfpack defense is the strength of the pack. The wolf, the pack. Are they up for the task for this high-powered Louisville offense coming their way?
Yeah, I think this is what Tony Gibson kind of lives for, is figuring out offenses like this. And he's going to come up with a great plan. What stands out to me about this Louisville offense in relation to this NC State defense is the explosive plays, is that they got some explosive playmakers. They've hit some big plays, and clearly we've talked about it a lot, but I feel like it showed up somewhat again in this Virginia game is preventing those explosive big plays. So to me, that'll be the key of the game. Can NC State's defense kind of just play a bend, don't break against this Louisville offense that has, like you said, I mean, leading in pretty much every category. Jack Plummer's come in, knows Brom's system, and playing at a very high level. And the running back, Gerard Jordan, is very fast. So if NC State isn't having that good kind of gap integrity, he could be out the gate. And then I know Jamari Thrash, like you said, transfer portal, guy that came in from Georgia State. He's a receiver, only has 19 catches, but he's got 400 yards. So he's averaging over 20 yards a catch. A quarter of those catches I've got for a touchdown. He's got 5 touchdowns on only 19 catches. So to me, the theme of the game is going to be that bend, don't break mentality, and maybe getting them all scheduled so they can't be in those second and mediums where they can kind of take some shots.
The glaring, like if there's a warning sound hammering, it's you have a recklessly explosive offense. And if you listen to Dave Doran in the post game, their secondary, specifically their safeties, which are wildly important in that 3-3-5, they're banged up right now. Right at certain points in time, they had like their number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, and number 6 safeties all injured. Now I'm just paraphrasing, but pretty much all out of the game on last Friday, and that's good. Like, safeties are oftentimes the guys with the deep responsibilities. They're the guys that are preventing those big plays or coming up and making a tackle when somebody like Jordan does, get through the first level or two.
Right. So, I think that you bring up a great point in that. I mean, the safety is kind of called the safety to be the safety valve.
I was trying to explain
that, are the deep safety in the pass game, don't get beat over top, be deeper than the deepest player. And then they're the guys that are making those, touchdown saving tackles. So to your point, who do we see as safety? Are they healthy again? Are we going to have some of our guys back? That could play a big role. And again, Brom's done a great job. He's got a great offensive mind. We talked about the defense getting after our running backs and pass protection. I'm sure they're going to be scheming up ways to get after the safeties.
And Tony Gibson, like there's the task, right? It's get those, whoever's playing safety up to speed is kind of the, I look at the defensive line. I really like a lot of things that they're doing. Love Davin Van. I look at the linebacking core. I was impressed by Scott a few times in that game. And then obviously Peyton Wilson pops, 3 or 4 times a game just because of his athletic ability. I liked what the corners were doing. Aiden White was back out there playing well. Our guy, Shy Battle, that was on the podcast. It's like, I think going into this game, your job as a defensive coordinator is get the safeties up to speed, and maybe you can lean on some of the veterans at the other positions to maybe get a little less attention.
Yeah, we've hit on it all year, but I feel good about this defense. There's a lot to like. Now this is going to be, outside of Notre Dame, obviously with Sam Hartman and them, this will be a tough test and one of the best offenses that this defense sees all year long. So this will be a true test. I mean, I think this is the game we've talked throughout this whole podcast about, okay, can they still accomplish what they want to accomplish? This is going to be the game that kind of clarifies it. Right now, after that Virginia game, it's like, do they look like a team that can play in the ACC championship? I don't know. But now we'll truly find out what this team is made of, both offensively and defensively, if they can compete at the highest level to be in that kind of next tier behind Florida State.
The way I've described it, and jump in and correct me if it becomes hard to understand, is the less words you use to describe State's season, the better it is, right? If you just say they're 3-1, all right, that's good. If you say they're 3-1 and their only loss is to, at the time, a top 10 ranked Notre Dame team, that's fine. Okay, they're 3-1, top 10 ranked Notre Dame team, but UConn stuck with them, and that's no good. And then you add, but UConn stuck with them, and Duke beat UConn by 40, and it's like, all right, that's no good. And then you add UConn stuck with them, and the UVA game came down to the wire. They started a freshman quarterback. Like, the more words you use, the more difficult it is to be excited about it. But you can always just zoom all the way the heck out and say, you're 3-1 and your only loss was to Notre Dame. And that's a pretty good resume for the first month of the season.
That's a great way of putting it, honestly. And I'm sure that's what Doran is telling his team is, hey, we're 3-1. You know, you want to still have confidence in these guys. You don't want them checking the ESPN app after the game and seeing that Duke beat the brakes off of UConn and Virginia hasn't won a game in 13 games now or something like that. I mean,
got smacked at home by
JMU and all that. So to your point, I think that's a good way of pointing it, looking at how this season is going. And I think this will be that game, 4-1 and beat a good Louisville team kind of trumps all those other words that you just said.
and yeah, the counter argument to what I just said would be, you are what your record says you are, right? Like, the words don't matter. You are what your record says you are. I want to have a quick Dave Doran discussion, just because his name popped up in another podcast, and I think it applies to what we were just talking about. It was Pardon My Take, and they had Andy Staples on, which is another podcast. Andy Staples used to be with The Athletic. I think he's with On3 now. And they were discussing this moment college coaches are having with Deion Sanders and Dan Lanning talking back, and Ryan Day coming at Lou Holtz, and this thing where, like, coaches are making themselves like almost pro wrestlers, like they're making themselves into part of the story. And Andy Staples, the thing that I thought was funny was, he goes, it's an entertainment business, right? And you need to build your brand, you need to be entertaining. And he goes, just, take a guy like, and he was trying to think of, you could tell, like, the most bland good coach out there. And he goes, take Dave Doran at NC State. He wins 8 or 9 games every year. Take that guy. But imagine if he were fun. And I was like, first of all, insult, like, Ricochet shot at Dave Doran, right? You never, like, there's nobody out there. It's like, imagine if he was fun. It's like, okay, so you're saying he's not fun. But, like, is there an opportunity for Dave Doran to show more of his personality? In this era, does he need to show more of his personality? You don't want to be known as the boring guy.
So that's what I actually think Dave does a great job of with this fan base, is he wins just enough, he wins enough games to go to a bowl game. We beat Carolina, and then after we beat Carolina, he has that soundbite. He always has
the shirt off. Yeah.
He had it when he first got here, talking about how we're a blue-collar school, which the fans love. Then one year it was the drinking the solo cup with the cigar. Last year he had another line against them. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he's been great at that. And it doesn't get the national attention because it's NC State is not on national TV like Deion, like Dan Lanning had at Oregon, like Ryan Day had with Ohio State, Notre Dame. So it doesn't quite have that magnitude, but Dave has those kind of one-liners in him. So to your point, Friday night,
that's where I was going.
ESPN, does he try to, join this WWE wrestling, show? Like,
is there a hater out there that is there a hater out there that after it, like, knock on wood, whatever, if they beat Louisville, is he going to have somebody? Is there a Lou Holtz somewhere that should be like duck and coming?
Well, I'm trying to think if we've said anything. It's going to be like Tim Donnelly on the Path Therapy podcast.
You'd see me retweet it with like and subscribe. No publicity is bad publicity. I mean, maybe, like, is there? I mean, I'm sure, and I host a 3-hour afternoon show. I'm sure I've said things that he's been like, if it got to him, which I doubt he listens to much media, he'd be like, that's not true. Or someone bigger, right? Does he call out Andy Staples and go like, who's on fun now, Andy? Yeah. Like how far is he willing to go? Because, like, to Dan Lanning's credit, Oregon is probably Oregon is already cool because of the Nike stuff, but they're probably like more buzzworthy in recruiting circles today than they were a week ago.
Yeah, that was genius of him. He knew those cameras were on there.
Yeah.
How did ESPN get that footage so quickly? He knew exactly what he was going to say. He had it ready to go, and I loved it. The thing that made me laugh though is how he said we're not built on flash. It's like Oregon's been the flashiest program for the past 2 decades, had more uniform combinations than anyone.
And they were actively wearing shoes that change colors. With your body heat, their shoes changed colors, but they're about wins, not clicks.
Yeah.
So should Dave?
What could that be? I can
exactly.
see Dave having something up his sleeve.
All right. I mean, I hope so. Like it's one of those things where
all press is good press. I mean, obviously this would be nowhere near the extent of Deion, but hearing that Deion's giving Colorado over $90 million of free marketing, I mean, and recruits I'm sure are eating it up. It was very smart of Dan Lanning. I thought Ryan Days was a little bit of a stretch. Like that felt a little forced.
That's the concern though. Because have you ever been playing pickup basketball with someone that's not a trash talker who tries to trash talk?
Yeah.
And it's like super cringeworthy, and it could have the exact opposite effect,
yes.
right? Like you could come off as the nerd. Like Dan Lanning went up against Deion and matched like sizzle for sizzle. Norvell for Colorado State, despite the fact that Colorado State played really, really well against Colorado, tried to go like tit for tat with Deion, and it came up horribly. He by the end of the week, Deion's mom was arguing back against Norvell. It went really bad. Like you don't want to get involved with that if you can't. I don't want to say win because you can lose the game and still win the PR war. Like you don't want to be the guy that's forcing it.
Without a doubt, but I'm telling you, Dave has it. So actually, I will say, I found the quote. He told the ESPN broadcasters in his coaches when they meet with the media the day before the game, and the quote was about UNC. They don't like us. We hate them. We're blue collar. They're elitists. Their coaches talk down to us. They talk behind our backs for recruiting and negatively about our coaching staff. So he's proven he can do it. He's done it before.
Needs that.
He's done it to Dabo. He's done it to UNC. I don't think he has any reason to do it to Louisville other than the fact that this is an ESPN primetime game.
I don't know if he does it to Louisville. If they win the game against Louisville, he needs to have something. I don't care. Say that about North Carolina. If he just came out and said, hey, listen, we're the blue collar in this state. Like, all this hype's going to Duke. All this hype's going free Tez. I want him to do something just because, he's like, again, Andy Staples picked that name out of the blue, but he wasn't he was trying to pick like a unfun, boring name, and he came up with Dave Doran. So you got to fix the reputation.
I like it, especially with college game day going to be right down the road in Durham.
The
very next morning.
That's the perfect example. Say everybody that's here for tomorrow's in the triangle for tomorrow's game, the best team just played. Walk off.
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking for, and that will walk off Pack Therapy. We'll be back next week, hopefully with a pretty big interview. So stick around for that. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it, and we'll see how the Louisville game goes. Appreciate it.